There's a sweetness to nostalgia, that quiet pull toward the past. It feels warm at first, like the glow of candlelight in a dark room. But if you stare long enough, the warmth starts to burn, because beneath nostalgia's beauty lives something darker, a kind of emotional mirage, a haunting wrapped in honey. We think nostalgia is love for what was, but psychologically, it's often grief for what never truly existed. Nostalgia begins in the hippocampus, the brain's memory archive. It's where fragments of sensation, emotion, and image are stored. But memory is not a recording, it's a reconstruction. Every time we recall the past, we alter it slightly, softening some edges and brightening others. Over time, what we call the good old days becomes less a reflection of truth and more a carefully edited story we tell ourselves to feel safe. That's the first dark truth. Nostalgia lies. It turns pain into poetry, distance into beauty, and emptiness into meaning. It's the psyche's way of anesthetizing the ache of impermanence. We use nostalgia to make peace with what we lost, but also to avoid seeing how much of it was never really ours to begin with. The brain releases dopamine when we remember something fondly. That means nostalgia is chemically addictive. The more we revisit the past, the more reward the brain feels, a hit of comfort, of familiarity. In uncertain times, nostalgia acts like an emotional sedative. We turn to old songs, old lovers, old stories because they remind us of a time when life felt more known. But this soothing comes at a cost, because nostalgia doesn't just connect us to the past, it anchors us there. We start mistaking memory for identity. We cling to who we were because who we are feels unclear. This is especially true when the present feels unstable. When the world feels chaotic or love feels uncertain, nostalgia becomes an escape hatch, a place where everything made sense. Childhood, old relationships, the first summer you felt free, the time before heartbreak. The psyche retreats there, trying to find safety in a past that no longer exists, and in doing so, it resists transformation. That's the second dark truth. Nostalgia can become emotional regression. It seduces us into mistaking stillness for comfort, but growth requires the opposite. Psychologically, nostalgia is often triggered by loneliness. When connection feels scarce, the brain reaches backward, trying to reattach to something it once felt tethered to. It's the same impulse that drives an abandoned child to replay happy memories of their parent, to soothe the nervous system by remembering a moment of safety. But what happens when the safety we long for was never truly there? When nostalgia becomes a form of self-deception, we begin to mourn illusions, not people, not times, but fantasies of wholeness. Nostalgia is seductive because it allows us to feel without acting. It's an emotional indulgence that masquerades as tenderness. We can cry over old photos, miss old homes, ache for former versions of ourselves, and in that ache, we experience intensity without responsibility. But there's danger in romanticizing pain, because what starts as remembrance can quietly become resistance, a way of refusing to inhabit the present moment. The past becomes a cocoon, a womb of familiarity, and the longer we stay there, the more the present begins to feel foreign, even hostile. In relationships, nostalgia becomes a weapon. We remember only the good parts, the laughter, the warmth, the first kiss. The pain gets edited out, replaced by the fantasy of what could have been. We don't miss them. We miss who we were when they loved us. This is the emotional trick of nostalgia. It doesn't call us back to people. It calls us back to versions of ourselves. The hopeful one, the unguarded one, the innocent one. But those versions no longer exist, and chasing them only deepens the sense of loss. The darker side of nostalgia is its connection to melancholia. Freud wrote, that mourning is for something we know we've lost, but melancholia is for something we can't name. Nostalgia blurs the line between the two. We grieve the ungrievable, time itself, and yet the yearning feels sacred because beneath the ache lies something holy, the remembrance of what it meant to feel whole. Nostalgia is the echo of oneness, before betrayal, before death, before disillusionment. It's not just missing a person or a place, it's missing belonging. Cognitive psychology calls nostalgia a self-continuity emotion. It helps us stitch together who we were and who we are. But if that thread becomes too tight, we lose flexibility. We can't evolve because our identity is rooted in an outdated narrative. We begin to say things like, I just want to feel like myself again, not realizing that the self we're chasing only existed in the context of who we used to be. The truth is, we don't miss the past. We miss the version of ourselves that existed before we knew what we know now. And that's the third dark truth. Nostalgia is grief disguised as comfort. It's the heart's refusal to let go of innocence. We return to memories not because they were perfect, but because they remind us of a time before our hearts broke, before our trust shattered, before we saw how complicated love and life really are. Nostalgia is the psyche's way of saying, I wish I could unknow the pain. But here's the paradox. The same memory that soothes us also traps us. Because when we idolize the past, we unconsciously condemn the present. We start comparing everything we have now to something that no longer exists. And nothing real can compete with the perfection of a memory shaped by longing. The more we chase the past, the less we inhabit the now. And the less we inhabit the now, the more disconnected we feel, which drives us back into nostalgia again. It's a self-reinforcing loop of emotional time travel. Neuroscientifically, nostalgia activates the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for daydreaming and self-referential thought. This is why nostalgia feels dreamy, hazy, even spiritual. But prolonged activation of this network can heighten rumination and depressive symptoms. That's why the past can feel beautiful, yet heavy. It's not designed to be lived in. Memory is a map, not a home. So how do we free ourselves from nostalgia's illusion without losing its beauty? We begin by honoring it, by recognizing that the longing it evokes is not a weakness, but a signal pointing towards something we once felt and now crave: belonging, wonder, simplicity, meaning. Then instead of trying to return to the past, we ask, how can I create that feeling here? Because the truth is, what you miss isn't gone. It's dormant, waiting to be rediscovered in a new form. The purpose of nostalgia isn't to return, it's to remind, to show us what matters, what we value, what we're hungry for. When you look at an old photo and feel your chest tighten, that's not just loss, that's direction. It's your psyche whispering, don't forget what made you feel alive. When nostalgia is integrated, it becomes wisdom. When it's denied, it becomes poison. So maybe the dark truth of nostalgia isn't that it lies. Maybe it's that it tells half the truth. It shows us what we loved, but not what we ignored. It comforts us with beauty, but blinds us to pain. But if we're brave enough to look at the whole picture, the love and the loss, the warmth and the wound, nostalgia transforms. It becomes compassion for who we once were. We stop longing to go back and start blessing the path that brought us here. Because maybe that's what nostalgia really is. The heart's way of saying thank you and goodbye at the same time. And once we learn to say both, the past stops haunting us. It starts teaching us. Thank you for sitting with me, for traveling back through the fog of memory and daring to look at what hides behind the warmth. Nostalgia is a ghost in silk. It seduces us with sweetness, but beneath it lies the mourning of what will never return. If this stirred something old in you, a memory, a scent, a person you still carry in your chest. You're not alone. That's the secret nostalgia never tells us. We all ache for what time took away. Share this with someone who understands what it means to miss what's gone. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the quiet corners of the psyche. And until we speak again, be gentle with your ghosts. They're only trying to take you home.